Hello and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today I'll be showing you how to cycle from East Barnet in North London to Wood Green. This ride takes about half an hour and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. By public transport, the same journey usually takes a little bit longer, and there is a lovely scenic route between these two places by bike, so it does make a lot of sense to cycle. If you find this video useful or you just enjoy watching, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as I try to post new videos just like it every week. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to contribute as well, then you can find a link to our Patreon page in the description below the video. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting on Cat Hill, near the centre of East Barnet village, and we're going to immediately head down Brookside, which is a relatively quiet street. I am always getting requests to do cycle routes in the London Borough of Barnet, but unfortunately there aren't actually that many places that you can do them. Barnet as a borough is not the best for cycling, and the local council really needs to up its game on things like cycle lanes and low traffic neighbourhoods. But what Barnet does have is a fantastic river valley with a cycle-friendly greenway running right through it, and I'm going to show that to you today. It starts off here in Oak Hill Park, and if you look at the lampposts that we passed, you'll see that there are those blue and white signs on there designating these paths as shared paths. So you're allowed to cycle on here, but just be aware that pedestrians do have priority here, so make sure you give people plenty of space and don't ride too quickly. Very soon you'll come to a blue footbridge which you are allowed to cycle over, and this bridge runs over the Pymmes Brook. Now the Pymmes Brook is the river valley that we'll be following today for the first part of our route. It's actually a tributary of the River Lee, which runs through East London, and you'll be familiar with from some other rides on this channel. And Pymmes Brook itself runs from the north of Barnet, just north of here, down to roughly Tottenham Hale, where it joins the Lee as a tributary. The Lee itself is a tributary of the River Thames, and it joins that around Limehouse. We are not going to be following it that far today. In fact, when we get to roughly Arnos Grove sort of area around the North Circular, we're going to go into Haringey, the London Borough of Haringey, and we're going to use some of the new cycling infrastructure there, which I'll show you. It's more on-road infrastructure, and we'll let that connect us to Wood Green. So although this river valley is fantastic as a leisure route, I think it's also a bit practical as a commuter route or a utility cycling route for, say, getting between town centres or to the shops, because we can connect it up to other bits of cycling infrastructure, and we can use it as a kind of a green spine to get us between different parts of North London. And hopefully in this video today I'll show you kind of how we can do that for these two destinations between East Barnet and between Wood Green. The route's not perfect, so for example here you're crossing over into East Walk, which is quite quiet, but you have to briefly cycle on Parkside Gardens, which we went over there, which is quite a busy road. It would be much better to have some sort of crossing there, either a parallel zebra crossing which cycles can use to give us priority, or even a signalled crossing just for less confident cyclists, so you don't have to dart out into the road. But for now, just be careful as you cross that road to get to East Walk. East Walk itself though is very quiet, and it runs parallel to Pymmes Brook, which is in that stretch of grass to the right hand side of us. You can just see it down there at the bottom of the slope. One thing I would point out is that there is a little bit of rudimentary cycle wayfinding on this route. If you look on the left hand lamppost there, you'll see a blue sign that's pointing us to the left here, and then there's another sign here pointing us to the right to swerve into Waterfall Walk. Of course, that crossing of Osage Lane we just did suffers from a similar problem as the big road crossing that I talked about earlier. It really does need some sort of zebra crossing or signalled toucan crossing to get us safely across there, and I'm sure it's not just for bikes. I think people walking and pedestrians would appreciate that too. So we now find ourselves on this path here called Waterfall Walk. This has its advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantages are that it does not have street lighting, unlike the previous section through the park that we were on. I know that some people don't like cycling in paths like this, which are slightly away from the road at night when they don't have street lighting, so I just thought I'd flag that up. Obviously, it is up to everyone individually what they think is safe and what they feel comfortable doing, and I personally think that I'd probably be okay going down here at night, but I know that there probably are people who wouldn't be as well. The other thing to note about this path is that it is quite a bit wider than the path through the park that we went through at the beginning, and I think that's great. It does mean that although there are quite a lot of people walking down here, it's a popular place to go for a stroll, you do have plenty of space to overtake people, although of course remember it is a shared path, so do make sure that you leave people walking with priority. One quite pleasant thing about Waterfall Walk, which is a really nice name I think, is that you can actually hear what sounds like a waterfall in the background. That's because the Pymmes Brook is just to our right past those trees, and you can hear the sound of gushing water, which I think is really nice and relaxing. It does really feel like you're in the middle of the countryside here, even though you are actually in North London. There's something very cool coming up in a second. If you look on your left, just as we come past these trees, you'll see a railway viaduct there made out of brick. It's really quite imposing and a really cool structure. And we're going to see more of it after we've crossed this road here, which also needs a much safer crossing like those other two roads that we crossed a minute ago. One thing that might surprise you though is just what this railway viaduct is. It's actually the Piccadilly line of the London Underground. It's the tube. Of course, it's not very underground at this point in your journey, being on a railway viaduct, but it does go into a tunnel very shortly, and we'll cross it again just after it does go underground. So I'll point that out to you again in a second. For now though, there is one thing that's important to say about this stretch of path, which is through Arnos Park, and that is that Arnos Park actually shuts at sunset, so you can't cycle through here at night. That's an important detail if you're planning on commuting through here on a bike in the winter, as it's likely it would be dark when you left your work. If you do need to bypass the park, and I think this is the only non-24-hour part of the route, then you can mostly cycle down Moreton Way and Wilmer Way, which are streets which run more or less parallel to the park. Make sure you do check a map to find the correct route there and to work around Arnos Park. I don't think those streets are hugely quiet, so I definitely would prefer going through the park if given the option. If you do use that bypass, you can rejoin Arnos Road here using Seafield Street. We are once again at a spot which could do with a slightly better crossing over Bowes Road to get us into Shakespeare Avenue here. The surface here could also do with a resurface, although there is fortunately a little ramp, which means you don't have to quite dismount in order to get down here, so the route should still be reasonably accessible to people who are disabled and can't dismount from their bikes. If you hadn't noticed on your own accord, you can probably see now that we've left the River Valley Greenway and we're now on our own streets. We've taken some quiet streets here around Arnos Road and Milton Grove, and now strangely we're finding ourselves on the North Circular here, which is called Telford Road at this point. Now Telford Road has a quite strange cycle lane running next to it. It's really just a two-way cycle track painted onto a very wide pavement. However, it does actually do the job. This is a continuous pavement with a pretty decent surface. There are no side roads to interrupt it or anything, so we're very happy cycling down here, completely protected from the extremely busy road traffic to our left. Actually, it wasn't quite right to say that there were zero side roads. There is a little side path here, so do make sure you watch to make sure that no one's driving a vehicle or cycling down there. But generally, you can cycle down this bit uninterrupted, and it isn't a problem. What's much worse is when we get to the end of it and we use this crossing. This is a multi-stage crossing over the North Circular, and if you're going to be waiting for the lights at each one, expect to be there for a very, very long time. It is very much prioritised towards cars. Now, earlier in the route, I promised to point out where we'd cross the Piccadilly line again, and really that's just coming up here. The way to know where it is when we pass the side road on our right, then there'll be a slightly derelict looking wall on our left, and the tunnel actually is behind there. The line actually enters a tunnel right before that wall, and then it does not leave the tunnel until Barron's Court, which is near Hammersmith. So if you were to accidentally wander into that tunnel, you'll be underground for a very, very long time. Tewkesbury Terrace, the road that we're on, is generally pretty quiet, and if you were wondering why that is, it's because we're actually in a low traffic neighbourhood recently created by the London Borough of Enfield. If you hadn't clocked that already, you will clock it when we go around this corner on the left, as we're just cycling through a filter there, which prevents motor traffic from running through onto Warwick Road and keeps this whole area free of through traffic and generally really quiet and pleasant to cycle in. There's also another filter at the end of York Road, which we're just turning into. Unlike the one we went through on Warwick Road, which was camera controlled, so it merely gives you a fine if you pass through it, this one is actually a physical closure, and the street has been blocked off with a single bollard in the middle and a couple of planters as well. Now, there is a section here on Brownlow Road which we have to go on for a second. Brownlow Road has not been filtered, so it does have a little bit of traffic on it. It's only a very short section here, and we turn off left straight away into another LTN. But there are plans in the future for Enfield to put a bus gate on Brownlow Road and to quieten that one down too, to stop the through traffic there, which would definitely make this journey a little bit more pleasant. I believe that what's happening there is that Enfield are waiting for Haringey, neighbouring Haringey, to decide whether or not to make their low traffic neighbourhoods permanent, so they can do that too. And so hopefully that will happen within the next year or two when Haringey makes their LTNs permanent. And talking of Haringey, we have now crossed into Haringey, and we're into Haringey's Bounds Green LTN, which is very close to Enfield's Bowes LTN and also equally quiet. We're only in here for a second though, as we're going to turn off onto the main road here. This is Bounds Green Road, and we have these quite decent semi-protected cycle lanes. They're quite wide, although they do, as you can see, give up at those crossings, but when you have them, the ones are actually pretty nice. The lanes are pretty decent. They keep you mostly separated from traffic, and I felt totally comfortable cycling down here. You get the same treatment on the other side of the road, so it is good for both directions. And it lets us make a lot of progress really quickly. Now, if any of you guys know this area well at all, you'll know that actually the streets that we were cycling on when we were on Tewkesbury Terrace, Warwick Road, York Road, etc., they were actually a slightly roundabout way of going parallel to Bounds Green Road, and it would have been much more convenient if these cycle lanes down Bounds Green Road continued all the way up to that big junction where we ducked into Tewkesbury Terrace, because we would have simply been able to go straight on and not do all that round the houses stuff. So we did take a bit of a detour there to stay in quiet streets with low traffic. If anyone from Haringey, Enfield, Transport for London are watching this, I'd really recommend extending those lanes up to that big junction with the North Circular. I think it would speed up a lot of trips, and I don't think a lot of people will actually know how to weave around those back streets in the LTNs necessarily, as it's not the most direct route and it's not particularly obvious unless you know all the back streets like I do. If you want a little bit of help navigating those back streets, do remember that you can always download a map of the route, and there is a link in the description to that, and you can get the GPX file and just use it on whatever app or device you need. Although if you've been paying attention to these videos, you may not need them. Maybe just watch the video a few more times and you'll be okay. The infrastructure on this section that we're on now is a little bit unloved, by the way. The paths that we just went on could really do with a resurface, and this cycle lane on Station Road has actually got worse since I last cycled down it. It used to have wands, I think, quite a lot of wands, but they seem to have just been knocked out by drivers and they've not been replaced. There were a few wands here, and there are more further up, but yeah, you can see that a couple of them are missing, so it would be great to have that kind of reinforced, maybe with proper stepped cycle tracks using a curb, and have this developed into a proper scheme. There is a bit more protection left just here as we approach Wood Green Tube Station, so this bit's alright, and it is the busiest section to be fair, but I think it would be better to have a more consistent quality. Unfortunately, it does give up at the bus stop here, and I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to cycle through this big mass of cars and buses, so I just dismounted here and I walked just to be within sight of the tube station here at Wood Green so I could show it to you guys. But we are here, we've reached our final destination, Wood Green, and I'm just going to get out of the way for this man running for the bus. And yeah, thank you so much for watching that. Do let me know in the comments below what you think of that. I actually quite like that river valley. It's a shame that Arnos Park isn't a 24-hour park, as it does mean that it's not the perfect commuter route, but it's interesting how you can connect this other infrastructure to that big greenway, the Green Spine, which is also a lovely leisure route. So yeah, do make sure you like the video so other people can find it. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. If you've made it this far, you clearly enjoy the video, so do hit subscribe so you see more. And thank you again to everyone on the Patreon. You are massively appreciated, and you let me keep doing what we do on this channel every week. So I'll see you again next time.